welcome back to the Zarlengo Foundation Unlocking Learning Disabilities podcast. Today we are joined with Taylor Ting, author of Clara and the Long Way Around. Is that correct? That's your first book?
Clara Poole and the Long Way Around. Yep.
Clara Poole and the Long Way Around. And then the second one is Clara Poole and the Wrong Way?
And the Wrong Way Up. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. That's awesome. Is there going to be a third book or is it a 2-book series?
Well, hopefully there'll be a third. So we'll see.
Yeah.
Waiting in the wings to get the red light.
Okay.
Yeah.
So correct me if I'm wrong, but you yourself are dyslexic. Is that correct?
I am. I am severely dyslexic. And I have been, obviously all my life, but I really wasn't aware of dyslexia until much, much later, actually when I was applying to college. And so I kind of went through my early childhood not knowing, and I'm 51, so dyslexia when I was growing up was less talked about. The word wasn't as familiar as it is today, and so I kind of just learned a whole bunch of different coping mechanisms, and really they didn't catch it until I was going to apply to colleges. And my board scores were incredibly low, but my grades were good. And so they said something must be out of whack. And so I went and had a lot of testing done. And they said, there's the reason. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm guessing you did not love to read as a kid. Is that correct?
I had a lot of trouble reading. So I actually did love to read. I just was really hard for me. And I did have a reading tutor early on. And it was really important for me, not necessarily because it helped me read better, because again, I don't think anyone really recognized exactly what was going on. But the one thing that really happened was, I wish I could remember this woman's name and I can't, but she really just taught me to love stories. And I think that that's the thing that followed me through my life, was this idea that, story comes first. And then reading and writing kind of come after that. And we'll talk in a second, but I never expected to be an author.
I was going to ask you, how did you go from dyslexia in grade school and high school and not really knowing and probably not loving the art or the activity of reading to, I'm going to write books? How did that all come about?
I'd been around entertainment a lot. I'd been in video editorial. I had been in effects and design. And I started actually a design agency that became a software company that worked for all of the entertainment companies. So all the advertising agencies, television companies, and movie studios. And so I was around storytelling kind of all my professional life. And I was in leadership for a long time too. So for me, dyslexia really wasn't just about reading issue. It was really about a broader communication, and especially with leadership, it was very difficult because sometimes I would, tell people, things that I wanted, and I would tell them the wrong way, or backwards. And to obvious results. So really, it wasn't until I actually got out of that business, and I was on a road trip with my 2 daughters, and I'd been kind of thinking about stories, again, and I had been telling them a bedtime tale that became this kind of episodic thing. And on the way on this road trip, my oldest daughter, Harper, said, "Well, why don't you write a book?" And I was like, "Yeah, well, I'm not really, And she's like, "Well, actually, why not try?" And so when I got back from that road trip with them, I actually reached out to a woman named Mary Rose Wood, who wrote a series called The Incorrigible Children of Ashton Place. And we listened to this book on tape. And I really liked the way that she kind of talked about writing. And I asked if she would mentor me. And so I kind of did a 6-week boot camp with her and kind of went through the ins and outs. And she saw some of the things that were problematic, within my writing. And she told me that there's things called editors and all those types of things as well. So, and really just to focus on the imagination and the story. So there's a very long-winded way of saying that it wasn't something that I was trying to do, but I kind of wish I had done it, years and years and years ago.
So here's a technical question. Do you physically type out your stories? Do you dictate them? How do you actually write the book?
So I do type. I also do longhand, and it depends on the stage in which I'm writing. So normally when I'm kind of concepting or just beginning a book, I'll write longhand because it actually slows me down. Sometimes it keeps me focused. And sometimes, when I kind of need to slow down, I'll go to longhand, just as kind of a tactic. The one thing that has really been helpful to me is text to speech, and I use it pretty religiously. And I've used all sorts of different programs for it. 11 Labs is like the latest version or flavor that I've been using, which is really great. And there's two things that I love about it. One is I won't see my errors, but I'll hear them. And so it's a really great training aid for me. And it's a really great editor for me too. So it's practical as much as it is helpful. And the other thing about it is it's a good enough human read that as an author, it gives me a sense of cadence and tonality and all sorts of other things too. And so it really kind of helps me think about what it is I'm trying to express. And I would say text to speech is a godsend for me when it comes to coping with dyslexia.
So when you talk to kids and you're in a group of whatever junior high kids or younger, what is the advice you give them about yes, I was dyslexic and I had some troubles, but what is the advice that you give them as someone who's done something they never thought they'd do and is hard for somebody who's dyslexic?
Yeah. So the first thing I say to remind them is that it's not an intelligence problem. It's a communication problem. And I think that it's the one thing I wish someone had said to me, because I kind of felt broken a lot of my life. And so I think it's really important to realize that there's no issue with their intelligence. The second bit of advice that I give them is what I said earlier, is just love stories. And I think that if you love stories and love crafting stories or imagination, there are so many different ways that you can tell it. Writing is just one of them. And you kind of alluded to it. Maybe it's speaking it. Or maybe it's performance, or there's so many different ways to create and to emote. But even if your goal is to write a book, think about the story first, because the writing and the reading kind of because they have to. But when you're doing something that you really love, it's really worth toiling it over. And you find your ways, through it. And it's not as much of a slog and more enjoyable. And the last thing I say is try and be read. So if you're someone that is interested in writing stories, or plays or whatever it is, put it in front of people, or read it out loud to them. And so you can hear it in different ways. So try and experience what it is that you're doing in multiple formats. I guess there's the three things. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's great advice. We were talking, earlier about advice for parents and what you wish someone would have told your parents or your teachers when you were a kid about the way that you learned. Do you have any thoughts on that?
It's funny. So this is probably the hardest question I have when it comes to dyslexia. And I've talked with my mother fairly recently about it, because she feels, responsible is the wrong word. I think she feels, she's bothered by the fact that she didn't recognize it, early on. So there might be, I don't know, guilt, if I was going to put words in. I think that as far as I experienced it, because I didn't have a label for it, I just had challenges. And so I think it's just, in general, it's just being a supporting parent. To that degree, and I have a little bit of a mixed perspective on the labeling of dyslexia as a skill set, because I see the viewpoint, and I know that people like, the LinkedIn's of the world are calling it, dyslexic thinking is like this asset. And I definitely can see that. I definitely, I think differently. That type of thinking differently helped me all my life through all sorts of careers. However, it is a real challenge. And I think that in some cases, it's doing a little bit of a disservice to me, to now try to treat it like it's a superpower. And so I've heard some parents kind of talk that because maybe it's familiar, or maybe it's comfortable for them, or maybe it feels good. But I would say that in general, just be a supportive parent. In that regard, dyslexia is one in five people have it, so it's not like it's unique. It's just, and it's not life ending, but it can be life altering in some cases. And so I was fortunate enough, maybe that I didn't know about it early enough, that I didn't have something to almost like the label to lean on, in that way. So in some degree, it's like kind of forget about it and keep going, keep moving, I guess, through it. Yeah, I think that's a really hard question for parents, because I don't think the parents actually have a lot of control through. I think they can have a lot of concern. But it really is something I think that needs to be experienced by the individual. And I have a lot of sympathy for parents that are trying to deal with that. Kids have real challenges, because I don't know that there's a ton for them to do.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's finding them the right supports and finding kind of what works for that child. But that can be a long process. And it's a trial and error situation, right? Because as much as dyslexia is very common, everyone's experience is different. So what works for one dyslexic kid doesn't work for the other. And that becomes a huge challenge for parents.
And it's also very fluid. And so I think that there are times in your life and higher moments in stress in my life, and maybe this is advice, is trying to lower the stress, the environment of stress around your child, but you should probably be doing that regardless.
Yeah.
But at high points of stress, those are places where dyslexia kind of reared its head in bigger ways. So I do think that it kind of ebbs in certain ways. And I think that, like any other challenge, you tend to learn where you're good at and things you're good at. And again, I would just caution people to not use that as a scapegoat, to go and try and do hard things. Because again, it's not your intelligence. It's just how you're understanding communication.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we are so excited. So we're going to do an event together,
Yes.
October 11th at Bookie's Book Club, and Tom Phillips is going to join us, and we're going to have a bunch of kids, dyslexic and other kids with other challenges, and just some neurotypical kids that are going to come and learn about your books and hear about your stories. And I'm really excited to have you guys there and have that event together.
Yeah, I'm really excited to talk. And Tom is fantastic. So you've spoken to Tom too. So, and he's a delight with kids. So I'll bring my A game because Tom's going to be there for sure.
Yes, exactly. Well, I'm looking forward to meeting you, and we'll have a great time on the 11th, and we'll talk about your books, and it'll be a really good time. Yeah,
thank you so much. I appreciate it. And it's wonderful getting to talk about this. I really do think that especially having authors and creators that have been dealing with this, and so I applaud every single activity around dyslexia education. I think it's great. So thank you.
Yes, absolutely. Well, we'll look forward to seeing you on the 11th.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Have a good day.